This is Impressionist Dandelions with Mrs. Orendorff. We will begin our background by dipping our nature-made brush. We tied some leaves with rubber bands. You will dip it in two colors, blue and white. You can also add a little bit of dark blue for shadow. And tap, tap, tap. You may scrape a little. You want to keep a soft look like the Impressionist painters. You can also add just a little yellow for highlights to show some sunlight in your sky. For the grass area, you will do the same. You can make a new nature-made brush with some new leaves or rinse the first one you use. Dip it in some yellow and some green. If you want a softer look, you can also add a little white. Keep going, fill the whole area, overlap the sky. Step 3 for your Impressionist dandelion painting is to add where you are going to put the stems for each dandelion flower. In art, usually most artists go with odd numbers, 3, 5, 7. So in this case, I'm going to do 5 dandelions across my horizontal paper. You choose how many you want. I would definitely do more than 2. So we have 1 here. Notice how my stem is a little bit curvy because wildflowers grow in different directions. That's what makes nature very interesting. I have here different heights as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And they kind of gravitate towards each other, so I'm making them face each other. I have my green paint ready to go and a thin pointy brush. I'm going to dip it and carefully paint over each stem. Make sure that your background is dry. Mine is mostly dry. I would say about 75% dry, but I still see some wet areas. So I'm being very careful not to touch my background. Leaves, dandelions are in the sunflower family and the daisy family. So you want to make some long, wavy leaves. They're not short, and keep going. After you finish with all of your stems, you are going to make sure that those are dry before you do the color for the dandelion flowers. With a mustard yellow oil pastel, we are going to make the center of each dandelion flower. Kind of make a circle and then about 5 or 6 little lines sprouting out. Okay, 1, 2. Make sure that you are pressing hard enough so that the oil pastel goes well over your background painting. And keep going until you have all of them done. Now we are ready for the center of your dandelion, which is the fluffiness that makes that dandelion look like a beautiful ballerina. Here I have a medium-sized koosh ball. Most people think koosh balls are toys, but in the art room, they are tools like paintbrushes. You are going to dip it in white and then gently kind of make a circle, but it's a very light, gentle tap, okay? Because we don't want to cover the entire center of the dandelion. Just a little bit, like a white firework. And you want to go in a circular motion. And if for some reason your yellow pollen in the center gets covered up, you can always go over it later after your paint is dry, not while your paint is wet. So now that we have a very light center of the dandelion, I'm going to switch to a small koosh ball and I'm going to dip it in the white paint. And now I'm going to make a more filled outline to my dandelion flower. We are basically just tap, 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 tap on the edge of these circles that make our dandelion. tap, 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 tap. If your gouache ball feels like it's running out of paint, dip it again. Tap, tap, tap. Dip it again. Tap, tap, tap. I would do about 3 taps and then dip it again. 3 taps, dip it again. All right, now that our white paint is mostly dry, we are going to add color to our dandelions with a Q-tip and some paint. I'm going to start with the lightest color, which is yellow, and I'm going to work my way in from the edges and then in. Okay, don't be shy. Notice how I'm dipping my Q-tip in the paint and then doing about 3 dots gently to make sure that they are all full. If you go too fast or if you press too hard, then it will not look like a dot. You want it to look like a little sphere of color on your dandelion. 1, 2, dip it. 1, 2, dip it. If you see any little spots where you could need one, then you can add it. And I'm going to keep moving on to all of my dandelions. I would go heavier on the dots near the edges and just a few near the center. So we are continuing to add our orange dots. Remember, dip your Q-tip, which in this case it's your brush, and do about 2 or 3 dots and dip it again. Final touches for the middle of the dandelion. I have a little bit of black, a clean Q-tip, and I'm just going to do about 3 to 5 little dots near the center, depending on how big your dandelion is. If you have a big old dandelion, then I would do a few more. If you have a very small dandelion, then maybe do a little less. The next step is to add some flowers to the ground. Here I have a few colors of the same paint that I used up there, and then I mix this beautiful dark kind of burnt orange just to add more contrast to the ground. And you want to lightly print a few circles of each color. You can use a finger for different colors. See, we have 5 brushes. All right, just make sure that when you press, you're not pressing so hard that you pull up, because that's what happens. The center is always left empty, and you can kind of go in a circular motion if you want your circle to be a little bit bigger. You want to play with size too. Okay, there's some baby flowers in the fields, and then there's some bigger ones, etc., etc. All right, I would do just a few of each color, and then you can always go back if you feel, oh, this area needs a little more orange or a little more yellow. I'm going to use the center finger for some yellow. And this is just the beginning, because after these colors dry, we will put a different color in the center. Again, more contrast, more variety. I'm going to use maybe my thumb for the pink. Okay. The lower the flowers are, the bigger they should be, because they're closest to you. And then as they go higher up, they should be a little bit smaller. That's how you can capture distance in a picture. You could also have a little baby flower if it's smaller, etc., etc. But that is how artists capture distance or depth. Okay, remember, different sizes is what makes it interesting. To add final details, if you want to add any bugs to your beautiful background, your dandelion garden, you can add some thumbprints. In this case, I did yellow, and these will be turned into bumblebees because they are pollinators. They are going for the pollen and the dandelions. And I'm adding some ladybugs down here. This is all just adding more natural life to your picture, and you can do a sideways ladybug, or you can do a ladybug facing forward if you want it to be kind of crawling, and it's up to you how many you want. Remember, in art, oh no, okay, so if you spilled, you can just turn that into a positive. Remember, you can make several, etc., etc. Let it dry. I would do a black little dot for the head of the ladybug, and then with Sharpie or color pencil you can add the little feet and antennas. And we are down to the final details. Here we have a ladybug, and we are going to be adding just a few little details to her body. Usually you see a line right down the middle, and then it turns into the letter Y. It's an upside down letter Y. And you can do a few little dots on this ladybug's wings. And you can do the antennas. Now, if you don't have a steady hand or a very tiny brush, you can do that with a Sharpie. And the little legs. And you can add little eyes, etc. if you wish. On the bee, we're gonna move on to this bee, and I had to give it some time for my paint to dry. I'm going to do 2 black lines on the belly. Usually I tell my students bumblebees are extra fancy because they don't have 1 belt, they have 2. And then we do just a little triangle for the pointer. You can do antennas if you'd like. Again, if you don't have a very skinny brush, I suggest you use a Sharpie. And if you want, you can do the little eyeball, a little smile. That's totally up to you. Now the wings, I have been debating what color should I use for the wings. If some people use white, well, if you use white and you have white on your dandelion, then it's not really going to show white on white. So I would use a light blue, or you can even use gold to make it stand out. If you have it here, if your bee is positioned here where it's overlapping the sky, if you do light blue, it may or may not show up depending on what shade of blue you use. So I'm going to test in a minute a very light blue and see how that looks. You can always outline them too. Okay, I'm gonna have fun with these little antennas, and they're both gonna be facing forward. Okay, and I will keep going with the details to my other. Now this ladybug here, she's kind of facing forward, so I'm going to make these antennas overlapping here, and later on I can add a little face. And then the details on her back, it's that letter Y, and then 3 little dots on her shell, or actually the wings. And then the last bit is the little feet. If you've ever read The Grouchy Ladybug, you can get lots of ideas from that book on what a ladybug would look like. Okay, and keep going. For this cute little bee's wings, I'm going to have just a little bit of gold paint and a fine brush, and I'm going to make just 2 ovals kind of pointing down, kind of like a teardrop or a raindrop shape. And there is my beautiful bee's wing. I'm going to make another one here. If your paint is very see-through, do 1 layer, let it dry. Sometimes paint changes as it dries. It gets a little bit darker or a little bit brighter. And if you feel they are not showing enough, you can outline them with a thin Sharpie color pencil, or you can leave them because sometimes little bugs wings, they're a little bit see-through, and that's okay. I hope you enjoyed our project. See you next time. Please subscribe to our channel.